The Guardian reports that the Trump campaign is already putting into motion legal challenges, accusing the election of being stolen from Donald Trump. Trump is already peppering his speeches with accusations of the vote being rigged, even insisting that he won New Mexico in 2020 and that he won it in 2016. He didn't. And he said, if they counted the votes properly, I would have won New Mexico. But you know who's paying careful attention to everything Donald Trump is doing and saying right now? This guy, Jack Smith, the special counsel in the Washington, D.C. election interference case. Because the Supreme Court only granted partial immunity to former presidents for crimes they committed in the Oval Office, the crimes Donald Trump is committing right now do not fall under the protective umbrella of any presidential immunity because he's not president now. He's committing these crimes as a private citizen. Consider this, Donald. Consider this. The Guardian reports that as most legitimate pollsters are now winding down their operations with fewer and fewer polls, newly created Republican pollsters are ramping up their polls of battleground states. There has been a large swath of newly created partisan Republican pollsters. They were created after 2000 as part of a concerted effort to make it look like momentum favors Donald Trump. The New York Times reports that there's been a surge of 37 Republican-aligned polls flooding the averages during the past week. 30 out of 37 of these Republican pollsters show Donald Trump defeating Kamala Harris in key battleground states. The Guardian reports these phony polls are already poisoning, contaminating the Real Clear Politics averages, one of the averages cited most by Republicans. Meanwhile, Trump and Elon Musk are also claiming momentum by pointing to how well Trump is doing in the betting markets. Believe it or not, people bet on a presidential race. And Trump and Elon Musk are now claiming momentum, saying Trump is doing very well in the betting markets. But the New York Times reports that the betting markets are being manipulated to create the perception that Trump is more favored to win than he actually is. According to the Times, 4 separate Polymarket accounts. Polymarket is one of these websites that takes your bets, and you can go there and you can see the odds on who's going to win. According to the Times, 4 separate Polymarket accounts linked to one French national placed a total of $29 million betting that Donald Trump would win. That's enough to move the odds in Trump's favor. Trump then, according to The Guardian, cited his increased betting odds in a speech recently saying, quote, "I don't know what the hell it means, but it means we're doing pretty well." They are creating the false illusion that in the lead up to November 5th, Trump was winning, but it got stolen from him. It got stolen from him. Polls, good polls, are the guardrails of democracy. They are used around the world to help certify elections to determine whether there has been actual fraud. We know it's a fraudulent election when the exit polls and the polling averages show a different result than what the winning candidate is claiming. With these new polls, these Republican polls. Trump is once again attempting to create a false narrative, an alternative reality, so that MAGA Republicans will believe he's more popular than he actually is. Make no mistake. After Donald Trump loses on Tuesday, he will insist this is a stolen election. He will say, I was leading in all the polls. All the good polls showed me winning. You're leading in the fake polls. Donald Trump is absconding with one of the most important tools that prevent voter fraud. He's creating false polls in order to falsely claim voter fraud. Well, the Washington Post, they're very picky. They don't allow their voting averages to be contaminated. The Washington Post's latest averages of A-plus polls shows Harris beating Donald Trump in Pennsylvania by about a point. The Post warns it's tight in Pennsylvania. I should mention the Guardian's polling averages show Trump now leading slightly in Pennsylvania, and the New York Times polling averages now show Harris and Trump tied in Pennsylvania, with Trump slightly in the lead. But there are garbage polls contaminating the averages. The Pareto principle is based on the 1906 observations of Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto. Pareto came up with what is called the Pareto distribution, or the 80-20 principle, which over time evolved into the idea that you could apply the 80-20 principle to the stock market, where there's no question that 80% of the gains are made by 20% of the companies that make up the S&P 500. You could apply the 80-20 rule to your work habits. There are probably only 20 things you need to do each day that brings value to your company and your reputation, while the other 80% is just busy work. As Election Day nears, we are finding the 80-20 rule also applies to pollsters. 20% of the polls can be trusted, and 80% are just plain garbage. And because there's a lot of money to be made in polling, pollsters want to appear as accurate as they possibly can. They're thinking about the next election. On November 6th, the day after the election, we will learn which pollsters got it right and which pollsters got it wrong. But some pollsters, too many pollsters, are kind of sitting this election out. They are less concerned about getting it right and more concerned about not doing worse than their competitors. There's a lot of money to be made running a polling unit. What we are witnessing right now, according to experts like Nate Silver and others, what we're witnessing is something called herding. That's where brand name pollsters are more concerned with protecting their brand. So when they release their polls, they hew towards groupthink, the general consensus of other pollsters. They're more concerned with what the other pollsters are telling them than they are what the people they're polling are telling them. In effect, besides polling voters, they are also polling pollsters to make sure they're in line with the agreed upon narrative that this is a razor-thin race. The easiest thing to do is say it's too close to call. Well, you're not doing your job. You can't be held accountable if you say it's too close to call. Nate Silver writes over at his Substack that pollsters looking for future work are only concerned about making sure they don't rank near the bottom when November 6th comes around and their work is judged. Silver writes that the easiest way for pollsters to hedge their bets is to release numbers showing the race to be a dead heat. He goes on to say there's only a 1 in 175 million probability that one single pollster can keep taking polls that show the race constantly within the margin of error. He says it's statistically impossible for that to occur. Silver says the laws of probability dictate that we will see outlier polls showing one of the two candidates with a lead not commensurate to the herd. What we are seeing, according to The Guardian, is cowardice. Very few brand name pollsters are willing to report their data as is without first massaging the numbers so as not to stand out. Nate Silver says they're torturing the numbers so they don't stand out. The Guardian writes, quote, "This near monolithic picture emerging from multiple polls has triggered suspicions among some analysts of herding around state poll averages by pollsters cautious of being proved wrong for the third time running after significantly underestimating Trump's support in 2016 and 2020. In other words, many pollsters are terrified of undercounting the so-called stealth Trump voter as they did in 2016 and 2020. So they are weighting their polls to make sure previous Trump voters are included in the sample to create what they think is an even distribution across the political spectrum. But this methodology has been discredited. And now many are suggesting there is an overcorrection in the polls favoring Trump and undercounting Kamala Harris. And we're seeing it with this Iowa poll. The Des Moines Register broke with the herd. What's going on? What's going on? Well, the bottom line is Kamala Harris is going to win. Because, and I know this because there are legitimate polls and illegitimate polls, the same way there are real election results and what Donald Trump is going to claim after November 5th. She is going to win. The question is, by how much? Because Donald Trump is running, expect the worst. I got news for you. This isn't the most important election in our lifetime. It's only the most important election in Donald Trump's lifetime. He's going to lose, and he knows what the consequences will be. That means our fight for democracy has only just begun. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you so much for listening to me. Please share this episode. Please subscribe to my newsletter. Please subscribe to my channel. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room. Thank you for showing up. They set the clocks back, so everything was confusing. Be nice to yourself. I know everybody's stressed out. I know that. That just means you love your country. That's a good thing, to be stressed out. Remember, never forget this feeling and hold it with you after she's president. and keep fighting for your country. Constant vigilance. Don't take anything for granted. They took abortion away, and they will take same-sex marriage away. Please check out the garbage over at shopdavidfeldman.com. Stuff you don't need, like my worst-case scenario map on a coffee mug, the Predator mug, the MAGA cap, Donald Trump. I got to do a better job selling this shit. I should do a better job doing. And Donald Trump in Edvard Munch's The Scream. And, of course, I hope you're in the mood for Diarrhea, the Chef Apron. I sound like the canvassers working for Elon Musk knocking on doors in Pennsylvania. Boy, are they getting ripped off. The canvassers, they're lying to Elon Musk. It's a beautiful thing. He's paying all this money, and they're going, yeah, we knocked on those doors. We knocked on these doors. Okay. I don't know if I'm doing a show. I'm definitely doing a show early Tuesday morning at 2:30. Depending on what I'm looking at, I might. I mean, if there's this Iowa poll, things are folding in underneath Donald Trump right now. So I may do a show tomorrow, but definitely 2:30 early Monday morning. I don't need to tell my listeners to vote. I know you've already done that. Okay. Take a deep breath. It's not just going to be okay. It's going to be better. It's going to be better.